At just 13 years old, she sat in that courtroom with a smile that made everyone's skin crawl. While other kids her age worried about homework and plushies, Lily Carver had been living out fantasies that would haunt investigators for years. She truly believed she was untouchable, that her age was her shield, her get-out-of-jail-free card. What she didn't know was that her father couldn't hold the secret anymore. How does a child become a monster? How does that monster learn to hide behind the innocent face of a 12-year-old girl? This was the question that haunted the city. A question born from an act of violence so depraved it defied reason. Because the victim wasn't a stranger. It was her mother. The courtroom doors opened at exactly 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in late September. The air conditioning hummed too loud, as if trying to drown out the whispers that filled every corner of the gallery. Outside, news vans lined the street 3 deep. Inside, every seat was occupied. Deputy Marshal Linda Reeves led Lily Carver through the side entrance. The handcuffs were adult-sized, sliding loose around the girl's thin wrists. She had to hold her arms at an awkward angle to keep them from slipping off entirely. It should have looked pathetic. Didn't. Lily walked with the casual confidence of someone entering a school assembly, not a murder trial. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, tied with a pale blue ribbon that matched her collared shirt. Someone had dressed her to look younger. It wasn't working. The smile gave her away. She glanced at the crowd as she passed, catching eyes deliberately. A woman in the 3rd row looked away first, then a man in a press suit, then another. One by one, they broke contact. Lily's smile widened just slightly, like she'd won a game only she knew they were playing. The defense table waited ahead. Her attorney, Marcus Brennan, stood as she approached. He was a career public defender with 23 years under his belt, and in all that time he'd never looked more uncomfortable. He adjusted his tie twice in the span of 5 seconds. "Good morning, Lily," he said quietly. "Morning, Mr. Brennan." Her voice was light, almost musical. "Did you bring me those colored pencils I asked for?" He blinked. The court denied that request. Bummer. She sat down, chains rattling. "I get so bored just sitting here." Behind her, separated by a low wooden barrier, sat her father. David Carver had aged a decade in the 6 months since his wife's death. His face was colorless, skin stretched too tight over sharp cheekbones. His hands rested on his knees, fingers laced together so tightly the knuckles had gone white. He stared at the back of his daughter's head with an expression that couldn't be named. Not quite grief, not quite fear, something worse. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmurs. "All rise." The Honorable Judge Patricia Moreland presiding. The room stood in unison. Lily rose last, making a show of her chains. Judge Moreland entered from chambers, black robe flowing behind her like a shadow. She was in her late 50s, with steel-gray hair pulled back severely and eyes that had witnessed every variety of human cruelty. She settled into her seat, adjusted her reading glasses, and surveyed the courtroom with clinical detachment. Her gaze landed on Lily and stayed there. "Be seated." The room obeyed. Judge Moreland opened the file before her, though everyone knew she'd already memorized every word. "We are here for the preliminary hearing in the matter of the state versus Lily Marie Carver. The defendant is charged with murder in the 1st degree." She paused. "The defendant is 13 years old." A ripple moved through the gallery. Judge Moreland's eyes never left Lily. "Miss Carver, do you understand the charges against you?" Lily leaned toward the microphone. "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you understand the seriousness of these proceedings?" "Oh, absolutely." She tilted her head. "Though I have to say, 1st degree seems a little harsh. Shouldn't I get extra credit for being, a minor?" The courtroom went silent. Judge Moreland removed her glasses slowly. "Miss Carver, this is not a joke." "I know." Lily's smile never wavered. "I'm just saying, legally speaking, I'm kind of in a special category, right? Diminished capacity and all that." Marcus Brennan half rose from his seat. "Your Honor, if I may." "Sit down, Mr. Brennan." The judge's voice was ice. She leaned forward. "Miss Carver, let me be very clear. Your age is not a shield. It is a factor the court will consider, but it does not exempt you from accountability. Do you understand that? Lily shrugged. Sure. Do you understand that? A pause. Then, quieter. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Moreland replaced her glasses. The prosecution may proceed with its opening statement. Assistant District Attorney Catherine Wu stood. She was 34, sharp-featured, with dark hair cut into a severe bob. She'd built her reputation on three things: preparation, precision, and an absolute refusal to accept plea deals in cases involving children. Not as defendants, as victims. This case had forced her to recalibrate everything she believed about innocence. She approached the jury box. Empty for now, this was only a preliminary hearing, and turned to face the room. On the night of March 14th of this year, Wu began, her voice steady and clear. Margaret Carver was found dead in her home at 1847 Willowbrook Drive. She was 41 years old. She was a fourth-grade teacher. She volunteered at the local animal shelter on weekends. She had been married for 16 years. Wu clicked a remote. The screen behind her illuminated with an image of a cheerful woman with kind eyes and laugh lines. Margaret Carver smiled out at the courtroom, frozen in a happier time. Margaret Carver did not die quickly. She did not die by accident. She died in her own kitchen, on the floor she'd mopped that morning, surrounded by the groceries she'd just brought home. Another click. The screen changed to a crime scene photo, sanitized for court but still brutal. The outline of a body, blood patterns on white tile, evidence markers scattered like confetti. The medical examiner's report indicates she sustained 17 stab wounds. 17. The weapon was a kitchen knife, taken from the family's own knife block. The attack was sustained over a period of approximately 7 to 10 minutes. Wu paused, letting that sink in. What makes this case particularly disturbing is not just the violence. It's the methodology. The crime scene showed signs of staging. The victim's body had been moved post-mortem. Items from around the kitchen had been arranged in a specific pattern. Whoever did this took their time. They planned. They executed. They lingered. She turned back to the room, her gaze sweeping across the gallery before landing on Lily. The person who did this was 12 years old at the time of the crime. Whispers erupted. Judge Moreland's gavel came down once, sharp as a gunshot. Wu continued. Lily Carver was found in her bedroom approximately 90 minutes after the estimated time of death. She was clean. Her clothes were in the laundry hamper. She was reading a book. When police asked where her mother was, she said, and I quote, "Probably dead in the kitchen. You should check." A woman in the gallery gasped. Someone else muttered something too low to hear. During police interrogation, Wu said, her voice hardening, Lily Carver showed no remorse, no fear, no confusion. She answered every question with calm precision. And when asked why she did it, she said her mother had it coming. Wu walked back to her table, then turned for her final statement. Your Honor, the state will demonstrate that this was not a crime of passion. This was not a child acting out. This was premeditated murder, carried out by someone who understood exactly what they were doing and chose to do it anyway. Age does not erase intent. And intent is what defines murder. She sat down. The courtroom buzzed with low conversations. Judge Moreland didn't silence them this time. She was staring at Lily with an expression that might have been fascination or might have been horror. Perhaps both. Lily, for her part, had been doodling on the legal pad in front of her. When she sensed the attention, she looked up and met the judge's gaze directly. Then she did something that would be replayed on news broadcasts for weeks. She winked. Judge Moreland's face went rigid. Mr. Brennan, your opening statement. Marcus Brennan rose slowly. He looked at his notes, then at Lily, then at his notes again. When he spoke, his voice carried a tremor he couldn't quite suppress. Your Honor, members of the press, and those present today, this is a tragedy. No one disputes that. A woman is dead. A family is destroyed. But we must remember that we are dealing with a child. He gestured toward Lily. Lily Carver has a documented history of behavioral issues dating back to age 7. She has been evaluated by multiple mental health professionals. She has been diagnosed with conduct disorder and possible emerging antisocial personality traits. These are not excuses. They are medical facts. Wu shifted in her seat, already preparing her rebuttal. The defense will argue that Lily Carver is not capable of forming the specific intent required for first-degree murder, that her psychological development is severely impaired, that she requires treatment, not incarceration. She is a child who needs help, not punishment. Brennan's voice grew stronger. She is 13 years old. Whatever darkness exists in her, it did not grow there naturally. Something created this. Someone failed her. And now we're being asked to decide whether to throw her away forever, or whether there's still a chance to reach the child beneath the monster. Lily interrupted, her voice carrying clearly through the courtroom. You can say it, Mr. Brennan. That's what you were going to say, isn't it? Brennan froze. Miss Carver, Judge Moreland said sharply. You will not speak unless spoken to. Sorry. Lily didn't sound sorry at all. I just thought we should all be honest about what we're thinking. The judge's knuckles were white around her gavel. Mr. Brennan, complete your statement. But Brennan had lost his momentum. He mumbled something about psychological evaluation and mitigation factors, then sat down heavily. Judge Moreland looked between the prosecution and defense, then at Lily, then at the man sitting behind her. Mr. Carver, she said. David Carver. You're present as a witness for the prosecution. David Carver's head jerked up as if he'd been slapped. Yes, Your Honor. You'll be testifying about your daughter's behavior? Yes, Your Honor. The words barely made it out. And about the night of your wife's death? A longer pause. Yes. Lily turned in her seat to look at him. Her expression was unreadable, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, maybe, or warning. Daddy, she said softly, and the word carried a weight that made several people flinch. You know they can't do anything to me, right? I'm just a kid. That's what everyone keeps saying. David Carver couldn't meet her eyes. Miss Carver, face forward, Judge Moreland ordered. Lily obeyed, but slowly, deliberately. As she turned back around, she whispered something to Brennan. He stiffened, leaned away slightly, then nodded once. The court reporter raised her hand. Your Honor, I didn't catch that. It's fine, Brennan said quickly. Just client-attorney communication. But the reporter looked unsettled. And Judge Moreland, who had been watching the exchange carefully, made a note on her legal pad. The hearing continued for another hour. Procedural matters, evidence admission, timeline discussions. Through it all, Lily sat with perfect posture, occasionally doodling, occasionally yawning. Once, she counted on her fingers, lips moving silently. Someone near the front said later they thought she was counting the stab wounds. David Carver never moved. He sat like a statue, hands locked together, staring at nothing. But his right eye had developed a twitch that pulsed in rhythm with his racing heartbeat. When Judge Moreland finally called for recess, Lily stood and stretched like she'd just sat through a boring movie. As the deputies approached to escort her out, she turned one more time to her father. See you tomorrow, Dad, she said brightly. We've got lots more to talk about, don't we? David Carver's face crumbled. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Lily smiled that smile, the one that made skin crawl, and let herself be led away. The courtroom slowly emptied. Reporters rushed for the doors. Spectators whispered to each other, shaking their heads. But David Carver remained in his seat, hands still locked together, staring at the empty defense table. For 13 years, he'd been hiding more than just grief, and his daughter knew it. The second day of hearings began with rain. It hammered against the courthouse windows in sheets, turning the world outside into a gray blur. Inside, the lights felt too bright, the air too warm. People filled the gallery even more densely than before, drawn by yesterday's spectacle. The press section had doubled in size. Lily entered at 9:45 a.m., 2 minutes before the judge. She changed nothing about her appearance. Same ponytail, same blue ribbon, same oversized handcuffs. but something in her posture had shifted. She carried herself with more deliberate confidence, as if the previous day had been a dress rehearsal and now the real performance was beginning. She sat down and immediately leaned toward Marcus Brennan. "I've been thinking about the jury selection," she said conversationally. "When we get to trial, we should avoid anyone who taught elementary school. They'll have unconscious bias against me. Also, anyone who volunteers with children. Oh, and anyone religious, they tend to believe in inherent evil." Brennan stared at her. "Lily, we're nowhere near jury selection." "I know. I'm planning ahead." She smiled. "You should be grateful. Most of your clients probably can't even spell voir dire." Before Brennan could respond, Judge Moreland entered. The room rose, settled, and waited. "We will now review evidence submitted by the prosecution," Moreland announced. "Ms. Wu." Catherine Wu stood and nodded to her assistant, who began distributing folders to the relevant parties. "Your Honor, the state would like to present video footage from the police interrogation of Lily Carver, conducted on March 15th, approximately 16 hours after the discovery of Margaret Carver's body. The lights dimmed. A screen descended from the ceiling. Static flickered, then cleared. The interrogation room was small and windowless, painted industrial beige. A metal table sat in the center, bolted to the floor. On one side sat Lily Carver, smaller than, just 12, her hair messier, wearing a purple hoodie with a cartoon cat on it. On the other side sat Detective Raymond Chun, a 20-year veteran with a grandfatherly demeanor that usually put children at ease. It wasn't working. "Can I have some water?" Lily asked on screen. Her voice was steady. "Of course." Chun poured from a pitcher, slid the cup across. "How are you feeling, Lily?" "Tired. I didn't sleep much." "I understand. It's been a difficult night." Chen's voice was gentle. "Can you tell me what happened?" "Mom's dead." The bluntness of it rippled through the courtroom. On screen, Detective Chen barely reacted. He'd prepared for this. "Yes, I'm very sorry. Can you tell me how you know that?" Lily took a sip of water. "Because I saw her in the kitchen when I got home from soccer practice." "What time was that?" "Around 7:30, maybe 7:45. "And what did you see?" "Blood. Lots of it. And Mom on the floor." She said it the way someone might describe seeing a car parked on the street. Factual. Detached. "That must have been very scary." Lily shrugged. "Not really." Chun paused. "Not really. I mean, it was kind of shocking, I guess. But she looked peaceful. Like she was sleeping except for all the blood." She tilted her head. "Did you know blood is darker than you think it'll be? It's not really red like in movies. It's more brownish red, rust-colored." In the courtroom, someone made a small sound of distress. On screen, Chun shifted forward. "Lily, I need to ask you something important. Did you see who hurt your mother?" "No." "Did you hear anything? A struggle, maybe? Shouting?" "No. I was at soccer practice." "Right?" Chun consulted his notes. "Practice ends at 6:30. Correct?" "Yeah. And it takes about 15 minutes to get home from the field?" "Usually. So you should have been home around 6:45. But you said you got home at 7:30. The first crack appeared in Lily's composure. Just a flicker of something in her eyes, calculation maybe. She set down the water cup carefully. "I stopped at the convenience store. Wanted a snack." "Which store?" "The one on Maple." "What did you buy?" "I changed my mind. Didn't buy anything." Chun made a note. "Okay, so you got home around 7:30, saw your mother, saw all the blood. What did you do then?" "Went to my room." The courtroom stirred. Even people who'd read the reports found it jarring to hear. "You went to your room?" Chun repeated. "Yeah." "You didn't call 911? "No." "Did you check if your mother was breathing?" "No." "Why not, Lily?" She met his gaze directly. "She was obviously dead, Detective Chun." "I'm not stupid." The temperature in the interrogation room seemed to drop. Chen's grandfatherly warmth began to fade. "What did you do in your room?" "Read my book. Started my homework." "For how long?" "I don't know. An hour, maybe." Then Dad came home and found her and called 911. Your father works late on Wednesdays, correct? Usually until 9 or 9:30. So you were alone in the house with your mother's body for over an hour. And you didn't call for help. It wasn't a question. Lily treated it like one anyway. I told you she was dead. Help wasn't going to change that. Chun sat back, studying her. Lily, I need to ask you something very serious. Did you hurt your mother? No. Did you see who did? No. Do you know who did? A pause. Then, probably Dad. The image on screen froze. Wu tapped a key on her laptop. The interrogation continues for another 47 minutes, Wu said. But I'd like to focus on this moment. Note the defendant's immediate deflection toward her father. When pressed, she elaborated that David Carver and Margaret Carver had been arguing frequently, that there had been mentions of divorce, that her father had a temper. Behind Lily, David Carver had gone rigid. Wu continued. Initial investigation naturally focused on David Carver, but his alibi was airtight. He was at his office until 9:15 p.m., with multiple witnesses and security footage. The timeline didn't work. So investigators continued with Lily. She clicked again. The video resumed, jumping forward. On screen, Detective Chun had been joined by another investigator, Detective Sarah Peltier. She was younger, sharper-edged, less patient. Lily, Peltier said, we found your clothes in the laundry hamper, the ones you wore to soccer practice. Okay. They were washed. Yeah, I took a shower when I got home. Put them in the hamper. Before or after you saw your mother's body? Lily hesitated. After. So you saw your mother dead in the kitchen, covered in blood, and your first thought was to take a shower and do laundry? I was sweaty from practice. Your mother was dead on the floor. I know. And you took a shower. Yes. Peltier leaned in close. Lily, why were there traces of your mother's blood on the bathroom drain? The courtroom went silent. On screen, Lily's face remained perfectly still. Her eyes stayed locked on Peltier's. I don't know. Maybe I stepped in it. Maybe you stepped in it, Peltier repeated. Your mother's blood. Yeah. And tracked it upstairs to the bathroom. I guess. And then washed it off in the shower. I guess. Peltier slid a folder across the table. These are crime scene photos, Lily. I'm going to show you something. She opened the folder, angled it so the camera couldn't see clearly but Lily could. This is your mother. This is what was done to her. For the first time, Lily's composure cracked. But not with horror or grief. She looked at the photos and something happened to her expression. Something the courtroom couldn't quite name but could feel in their bones. She smiled. She had it coming, Lily said softly. The video froze again. Wu let the words hang in the air. That phrase, Wu said, had it coming, appears 6 times in the interrogation. When pressed on what she meant, the defendant refused to elaborate. But her effect throughout, her lack of fear, her lack of remorse, her strange detachment, painted a clear picture. Wu faced the judge. Your Honor, this is not a child in shock. This is not trauma response. This is someone who committed an act of extreme violence and felt justified in doing so. Judge Moreland looked at Lily, who was doodling again, seemingly unbothered by the video of herself. Mr. Brennan, do you wish to respond? Brennan stood slowly. Your Honor, this video actually supports the defense's position. What we're seeing is not calculated evil. It's profound psychological disturbance. The defendant's inability to process emotion appropriately, her disconnection from the severity of her actions, her inappropriate effect, all of these point to serious mental illness, not criminal culpability. She knew enough to wash evidence away, Wu countered. She knew enough to change clothes. She knew enough to create an alternative timeline that pointed to her father. She's 13 years old. She's functionally brilliant, Wu interrupted. She has an IQ of 138. She tested in the 99th percentile for strategic thinking. She understands cause and effect perfectly well. Lily looked up at that, and for just a moment, she looked pleased. Judge Moreland held up a hand. Enough. This debate is premature. We're here to establish probable cause, not to litigate competency. She looked at Wu. Is there additional evidence? Yes, Your Honor. The state has secured testimony from Dr. Ellen Voss, the court-appointed psychologist who evaluated the defendant. Call her. Dr. Ellen Voss was in her early 60s, with silver hair cut in a practical bob and wire-rimmed glasses. She'd spent 30 years evaluating juvenile offenders, and her testimony had sent some to psychiatric facilities and others to adult prison. She carried herself with the weary authority of someone who'd seen everything human nature had to offer and been disappointed by most of it. She was sworn in and took the witness stand. Wu approached. Dr. Voss, you conducted a psychological evaluation of Lily Carver over a period of 4 sessions, correct? Correct. Can you summarize your findings? Dr. Voss opened her folder, though she clearly didn't need it. Lily Carver presents with severe conduct disorder with callous unemotional traits. She demonstrates persistent patterns of aggression, lack of empathy, disregard for authority, and manipulative behavior. Her emotional range is significantly constricted. She shows no evidence of remorse for harmful actions. In layman's terms, she understands right from wrong cognitively, but lacks the emotional capacity to care about the distinction. She can identify that others experience pain, but doesn't feel moved by it. Some might describe this as emerging psychopathy, though I avoid that term with juveniles. Why avoid it?
Because personality isn't fully formed until adulthood. There's debate about whether these traits can be mitigated with treatment. However, Dr. Voss paused, choosing words carefully. In my professional opinion, Lily represents one of the more concerning cases I've encountered. Can you elaborate? Most children with conduct disorder display impulsivity. They act out, lash out, struggle with emotional regulation. Lily is different. She's highly controlled, calculated. She plans her actions carefully and executes them with precision. During our sessions, she was consistently polite, articulate, and utterly devoid of genuine emotional content. She mimics appropriate responses, but there's nothing underneath. From the defense table, Lily raised her hand. Everyone turned. Yes. Judge Moreland said warily. Can I ask Dr. Voss a question? No. You may not. Oh. Lily lowered her hand. It's just that she got something wrong, and I thought we should be accurate. The courtroom held its breath. Judge Moreland considered, then nodded to Dr. Voss. Doctor, you may respond if you wish. Dr. Voss looked at Lily with clinical interest. What did I get wrong? You said I lack emotional capacity. That's not true. I feel things. I felt something when Mom died. Lily's voice remained conversational, almost friendly. Relief. That's an emotion, right? The gallery erupted in whispers. Judge Moreland's gavel came down hard. Dr. Voss didn't flinch. Relief that your mother was dead. Yes. Why? Because she was exhausting, Lily said simply. Always worried about me. Always trying to fix me. Always looking at me like I was broken. It was annoying. So you killed her. The word hung there. Naked, undeniable. Lily smiled. You make it sound like a compliment. The exact words from the video. Wu had mentioned them, and now Lily was performing them live, proving the point more effectively than any evidence could. Brennan shot to his feet. Your Honor, my client is not. This is not appropriate. Miss Carver, Judge Moreland said sharply, you will not speak again unless directly addressed by this court. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Lily's smile didn't fade. Wu turned back to Dr. Voss. Doctor, in your professional opinion, is Lily Carver a danger to others? Unequivocally, yes. Even in a secured facility? Especially in a secured facility. She's highly intelligent and manipulative. She will identify vulnerabilities in systems and people, and she will exploit them. Do you believe she can be rehabilitated? Dr. Voss hesitated. It was the first time she'd shown uncertainty. I don't know. With intensive, long-term treatment starting immediately, perhaps. But I can't make any guarantees. Some children with these traits respond to intervention. Others, she stopped. Others simply learn to hide better. Wu nodded and returned to her seat. Judge Moreland looked to the defense. Mr. Brennan, your witness. Brennan approached slowly. He looked even more haggard than the day before, as if each session aged him exponentially. Dr. Voss, you mentioned that Lily understands right from wrong cognitively. Isn't that understanding necessary for criminal intent? Yes, but so she knows murder is wrong. Intellectually, yes. Then how can we hold her responsible for actions driven by a psychological condition she didn't choose? Dr. Voss removed her glasses, cleaned them carefully, replaced them. Mr. Brennan, I've evaluated hundreds of children with severe psychiatric conditions. Depression, PTSD, psychotic disorders. Those conditions impair judgment. They create delusions or compulsions that override rational thought. That's not what we have here. Then what do we have? We have a child who chose cruelty because it suited her purposes. She wasn't hearing voices. She wasn't having a breakdown. She wanted her mother dead, so she made her mother dead. The psychiatric condition I've diagnosed explains why she lacks empathy. It doesn't explain away the choice. Brennan pressed on. But at 13, is she truly capable of making that choice? Doesn't neuroscience tell us the adolescent brain isn't fully developed? The adolescent brain isn't fully developed in areas governing impulse control and long-term consequences. But Lily's actions show excellent impulse control and detailed planning. Her developmental stage actually makes her more culpable, not less. It was a devastating answer. Brennan deflated visibly. No further questions, he mumbled. As Dr. Voss stepped down, Lily watched her with that same clinical interest. Just before the doctor left the witness box, Lily whispered something. Only those closest heard it. You forgot to mention the animals. Dr. Voss stopped. She turned back slowly. Excuse me. Lily spoke louder, clearer. You forgot to mention the animals, doctor. 3 cats in the neighborhood went missing last year. 1 dog. You wrote about it in your report, remember? Found dismembered in the woods behind my school. You wondered if I might have been involved, but you couldn't prove it. Isn't that what you wrote? The courtroom froze. Dr. Voss stared at Lily. That section of my report was sealed. How did you? I'm just really good at reading upside down. Lily said pleasantly. You had it on your desk during our second session. Fascinating stuff. I especially liked the part where you called me the most concerning case of developmental psychopathy you'd seen in your career. I'm flattered. Judge Moreland's face had gone white. Dr. Voss, is this true? Were there incidents involving animals? Yes, Your Honor. But there was insufficient evidence to. She's right, though, Lily interrupted. I did kill those animals. The cats were easy. Just left out poisoned food. The dog was harder. Had to lure him away from his yard. But he was friendly, so it didn't take much. I wanted to see how long they'd take to die. The answer is, it depends on the dose. Science is so interesting, don't you think? The gallery exploded. People shouted. Someone started crying. A man in the back stood up so fast his seat flipped over. Judge Moreland slammed her gavel repeatedly. Order. Order in this court. But Lily just sat there, smiling that smile, watching the chaos she'd created with evident satisfaction. Brennan had his head in his hands. Wu looked simultaneously vindicated and horrified. David Carver. David Carver had finally broken. He was crying, silently, shoulders shaking, tears streaming down his face. But he wasn't looking at his daughter. He was looking at his hands. Judge Moreland called for a recess. Deputies surrounded Lily to escort her out. As she stood, she turned once more to the gallery, to her father, and said clearly, Dad knows I've always been this way. Don't you, Dad? David Carver didn't answer. He couldn't. The truth was choking him. Don't you? Lily pressed, louder. The deputies pulled her toward the door. She went easily, but her voice carried. He's scared I'll tell the real secret. The courtroom doors closed behind her, but the words lingered like smoke. People filed out slowly for recess, speaking in hushed tones. David Carver remained in his seat, motionless except for the tears that wouldn't stop. Catherine Wu approached him cautiously. Mr. Carver, are you all right? He didn't answer. Mr. Carver, when you testify tomorrow, you'll need to be composed. Can you do that? Finally, he looked up at her. His eyes were hollow. She's going to destroy everything, he whispered. What do you mean?
But he just shook his head and returned his gaze to his hands, those hands that wouldn't stop trembling. In the hallway outside, a cluster of reporters surrounded the doors to the holding area. They couldn't see Lily, but they could hear her. She was humming something, a children's lullaby. It echoed down the corridor, cheerful and obscene. One reporter, a woman who'd covered crime for 20 years, turned to her colleague and said, I've never been afraid of a kid before. I know, he replied. What the hell are we watching? He had no answer. Inside the holding cell, Lily sat on the bench and finished her humming. Then she pulled out a piece of paper that Brennan had given her earlier, notes for tomorrow's session. She read them carefully, smiled to herself, and began to draw. She drew a family. 3 figures: mother, father, daughter. The mother's face was crossed out. The father's eyes were hollow circles. The daughter stood alone, smiling. That night, David Carver sat in his car in the courthouse parking garage for 3 hours. Rain drummed on the roof. His phone buzzed with messages from his lawyer, his brother, concerned neighbors. He ignored them all. Instead, he replayed moments. Lily at 5 years old, crushing a butterfly between her fingers and asking, "Why did it stop moving?" Lily at 7, standing over the family goldfish she'd left out of water, watching it gasp. "How long does it take?" she'd asked, not upset, curious. Lily at 9, when Margaret had confronted her about the bruises on her classmates' arms. "She annoyed me," Lily had said simply. "I made her stop." And the night he'd tried so hard to forget. He'd grabbed Margaret by the throat during an argument. Just for a moment. Just long enough to scare her, to make her shut up, to make her stop accusing him of being a failure, a coward, a disappointment. He'd released her before real damage was done. She'd stumbled back, gasping, terrified, and Lily had been watching from the stairs. "Daddy," she'd said, her voice small and sweet, "are you going to kill Mommy?" He'd turned, horrified, and seen his 5-year-old daughter standing there in her princess pajamas. Head tilted, expression unreadable. "No, baby, no. Daddy was just... we were just... It's okay," Lily had said. "I won't tell." But her eyes. Even then, her eyes had held something ancient and cold. He'd told himself it was a one-time thing. That he'd gotten therapy. That he'd changed. That Lily was too young to remember, too young to understand. He'd been wrong on all counts. The rain intensified. David Carver pressed his forehead against the steering wheel and made a decision. Tomorrow he would tell the truth. All of it. Not because he was brave. Because he couldn't carry it anymore. The third day began without rain. The sky was colorless, a flat gray that promised nothing. Inside the courtroom, the air felt charged, expectant. Everyone sensed something was coming. David Carver entered early, before the gallery filled. He wore the same suit as the previous days, but it hung looser now, as if he'd shrunk inside it. His face was drawn, eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. He took his usual seat and folded his hands, but they wouldn't stop shaking. Catherine Wu noticed him when she arrived. She paused at his row. "Mr. Carver, you're testifying today. Are you ready?" "Yes." "We'll start with background questions. Your marriage, Lily's behavioral history, the events leading up to." "I need to tell you something," David interrupted. His voice was hoarse. "Before I testify, there's something you should know." Wu sat down beside him. "What is it?" He opened his mouth, then closed it, shook his head. "I can't. Not yet. But when I'm on the stand." He looked at her with desperate eyes. "Don't let me stop. No matter what I say, no matter how bad it gets. Don't let me stop." Wu studied him carefully. "Mr. Carver, what are you going to say?" "The truth." Before she could press further, the courtroom doors opened and Lily entered with her escort. She walked with that same easy confidence. But today there was something else in her expression. Anticipation. She spotted her father immediately. Their eyes met across the gallery barrier. She smiled. Not the mocking smile she'd shown the judge, but something softer, almost fond. "Morning, Daddy," she called out. He flinched. She took her seat next to Brennan, who looked like he'd aged another decade overnight. As the room filled with spectators and press, Lily leaned back and watched her father with unwavering attention. Judge Moreland entered at precisely 9 a.m. The courtroom rose, settled. "We will hear testimony today from David Carver," the judge announced. "Mr. Carver, please take the stand." David stood. His legs felt unsteady, but he made it to the witness box. He was sworn in, raised his right hand, spoke the oath. The words tasted like ash. Catherine Wu approached. She began gently. Mr. Carver, how long were you married to Margaret? 16 years. And Lily is your only child? Yes. Can you tell the court about Lily's early childhood? Were there any concerning behaviors? David's throat worked. There were signs. Things that seemed off, but we told ourselves they were normal. Kids go through phases. What kind of signs? She didn't cry much as a baby. Not when she was hungry or hurt. It was almost like she didn't need comfort. Margaret thought maybe she was just independent. He paused. But as she got older, we realized it wasn't independence. It was absence. Like something was missing. Can you elaborate? Empathy. Connection. When other kids would cry, Lily would watch them like they were performing. No distress, no desire to help. Just observation. Wu nodded. Did this progress? Yes. Around age 7, her teacher called us in. Said Lily had been hurting other children. Nothing major. Pinches, trips, taking things and breaking them. But it was deliberate. Calculated. When confronted, Lily would apologize perfectly. But there was no sincerity. Did you seek help? We took her to therapists. 3 of them. They all said roughly the same thing. Conduct disorder, possible attachment issues, needs intensive intervention. But Lily was smart. She learned what they wanted to hear. She performed. And then at home, his voice cracked. At home, she'd stop pretending. What did she do at home? David's hands gripped the witness box edge. Small cruelties. She'd destroy things Margaret loved. Photos, jewelry, plants. Never obviously enough to prove it was deliberate, but we knew. And she'd smile when she saw Margaret's reaction, like she fed on it. Lily, at the defense table, was drawing again. Her expression remained neutral. Mr. Carver, Wu said carefully, did Lily ever hurt animals? A long silence. Then, yes. Can you provide examples? When she was 10, our neighbor's cat disappeared. They found it a week later in the woods. It had been... He stopped, swallowed hard. Mutilated. Lily came home that day and drew a picture of a cat. She showed it to Margaret and said, "This is what happens when things don't listen." Someone in the gallery gasped. "Did you report this?" "No." Shame flooded his face. "We should have." But Margaret kept saying maybe it wasn't Lily, maybe we were being paranoid, maybe we were the problem for suspecting our own daughter. And he looked down. I wanted to believe her. Were there other incidents? Birds. Small animals in the yard. Things would turn up dead, arranged in patterns. And Lily would be nearby, watching us find them, watching our reactions. We let that settle, then shifted. Mr. Carver, can you describe the state of your marriage in the months before Margaret's death? David's face contorted. This was the edge of the cliff. We were falling apart. Why? Because of Lily. Margaret wanted to institutionalize her. Get her real help, intensive psychiatric care. But I refused. Why did you refuse? Because I was scared. His voice rose slightly. Scared of what it would mean. Scared of admitting we'd created something that couldn't be fixed. Scared of... He stopped abruptly. Wu waited. When he didn't continue, she prompted, "Scared of what, Mr. Carver?" Scared she'd tell. The courtroom went very still. Tell what? David looked at his daughter. She'd stopped drawing. She was staring at him now, completely focused, like a cat watching a wounded bird. "The truth about me?" David whispered. Judge Moreland leaned forward. "Mr. Carver, speak up, please." He raised his voice, though it shook. "The truth about what I did." What she saw. Wu felt the shift in the room, the collective holding of breath. She pressed forward carefully. What did Lily see? David's composure began to crumble. Margaret and I fought. Constantly. About money, about Lily, about everything. I had a temper. I punch walls, break things. Margaret would say I was out of control, that I was dangerous. Were you dangerous? Yes. The word came out like a confession. One night, when Lily was 5, Margaret and I had the worst fight we'd ever had. She said I was a failure, that marrying me was the biggest mistake of her life, that she wished I was dead. And his voice broke. I grabbed her by the throat. I slammed her against the kitchen wall and I held her there. I watched her eyes go wide with fear and I felt. He stopped, breathing hard. What did you feel? Wu asked quietly. Power, he whispered. For just a moment, I felt powerful, in control. Everything she'd said, all her words, they stopped. She couldn't speak. She could only be afraid. And I liked it. The confession hung in the air like poison. How long did this last? Maybe 30 seconds. Maybe less. I came to my senses. I let go. She fell to the floor, gasping. I backed away, horrified at what I'd done. I kept saying I was sorry, over and over. And then, his eyes filled with tears. Then I heard a sound from the stairs. Lily, standing there in her princess pajamas. 5 years old. She'd watched the whole thing. Wu turned slightly, glancing at Lily. The girl's expression had changed. The casual amusement was gone. In its place was something harder, sharper. Recognition. What happened then? Wu asked. I rushed to her, tried to explain. Told her daddy was sorry, that he'd never do it again, that it was a mistake. She just looked at me with these empty eyes, and she said, It's okay, Daddy. I won't tell. Like she was comforting me. But there was no emotion in it. No fear, no confusion. Just acceptance. Did you hurt your wife again after that? No. Never. I got help. Therapy, anger management. I changed. He looked desperate to be believed. I really did change. Margaret forgave me eventually. We never spoke about that night again. We pretended it didn't happen. But Lily remembered. Lily remembered everything. Wu walked back to her table, letting the testimony breathe. Then she turned. Mr. Carver, did Lily ever reference that night? Not directly, but sometimes she'd say things. Little comments. When Margaret would lecture her about hurting someone, Lily would say, At least I don't pretend to be good. Or she'd look at me during arguments and touch her throat. Just a light touch. A reminder. A reminder of what? That she knew. That she had power over me. Wu nodded slowly. Mr. Carver, I need to ask you about the night of Margaret's death. Where were you? At my office. I work late on Wednesdays. What time did you leave work? Around 9:15. And you arrived home when? 9:30. Maybe 9:35. What did you find? His face went gray. I found Margaret in the kitchen. There was so much blood. I didn't understand what I was seeing at first. And then I saw the knife on the counter. And I knew. Knew what? That Lily had finally done it. What she'd been building toward for years. What I'd been too afraid to stop. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Moreland's gavel came down. Wu waited for silence, then asked, What did you do? I called 911. I checked for a pulse, but there was none. And then I heard footsteps upstairs. Lily came down, clean, calm, and she looked at me and said, His voice failed. He tried again. She said, I finally did what you couldn't finish. The air left the room. She said what? I finally did what you couldn't finish. Like she'd completed something I'd started. Like killing her mother was the natural conclusion to me grabbing her throat 8 years ago. Tears streamed down his face now. She smiled at me, and I understood. Everything I'd taught her by that one moment of violence. All of it had grown inside her like a cancer. I'd shown her that power came from hurting people. That when words failed, you used your hands. That the people who loved you were the ones you could hurt most. Wu stood very still. Are you saying you believe you're responsible for what Lily became? Yes. The word was barely audible. And you've been protecting her because you felt guilty. Yes. Even though she murdered your wife. David Carver looked at his hands. Those trembling, guilty hands. She's my punishment, he whispered. Everything she is, I created. How could I condemn her for becoming what I taught her to be? At the defense table, something happened. Lily stood up abruptly. Her chair scraped against the floor. Brennan reached for her arm, but she shook him off. "That's not true," she said. Her voice was loud, cutting. Judge Moreland straightened. "Miss Carver, sit down." "No." Lily's face had transformed. The casual amusement was gone completely. In its place was rage, hot, genuine rage. "He's lying. Miss Carver. He's making excuses." She was shouting now. "He thinks he made me this way? He thinks one night when I was 5 turned me into—" She gestured wildly. "I was always like this. Always. I remember being 4 years old and wondering why other kids cried when they fell. I remember thinking they were stupid, weak. He didn't make me. He just showed me that he was weak too." The courtroom was frozen. Everyone stared at her. This 13-year-old girl finally dropping her mask, finally showing the fury underneath. David was crying openly now. "Lily, please. You want to feel better about yourself?" Lily demanded. "You want to believe you created a monster, so you don't have to face the truth?" "What truth?" "That you married a woman who hated you, raised a daughter who frightened you, and you were too pathetic to do anything about either of us. You grabbed Mom's throat for 30 seconds 8 years ago, and you've been apologizing ever since. You're not powerful. You're not dangerous. You're nothing." She was breathing hard, fists clenched. "I killed her because I wanted to, not because of you, not because of anything you did, because I wanted to know what it felt like, because she was annoying and weak and I was tired of her looking at me like I was broken, because I could." The words echoed in the silent courtroom. "I planned it for months," Lily continued, quieter now but no less intense. "I researched knife angles. I practiced on cuts of meat. I timed when you'd be at work. I knew exactly how long I had. And when I did it—" Her voice took on a strange quality, almost reverent. "When I did it, it was perfect. She fought, but not enough. She begged, but I didn't care. And when she finally stopped moving, when that light left her eyes, I felt—" "Stop," David choked out. "Please stop." "I felt complete." Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Lily looked around the courtroom, at the horrified faces, the gaping mouths. Then she looked back at her father. "You didn't create this," she said. "You just gave me the excuse to tell myself you did. But the truth is, Daddy, I would have killed her anyway. Maybe sooner, maybe slower, but I would have done it. Because that's who I am." She sat down. The movement was calm, controlled, as if she'd simply finished presenting a school project. Judge Moreland's face was pale. "Mr. Brennan, restrain your client." But Brennan was staring at Lily like he'd never seen her before, like the mask had finally fallen and he was looking at something that shouldn't exist. Catherine Wu found her voice first. "Your Honor, the defendant has just confessed." "I'm aware, Ms. Wu." Wu turned to David Carver, still in the witness box. He'd collapsed into himself, shoulders shaking with sobs. "Mr. Carver, do you have anything else to add?" He shook his head mutely. "The prosecution has no further questions." Judge Moreland looked to Brennan. "Mr. Brennan, do you wish to cross-examine?" Brennan stood slowly. He looked at Lily, at David, at the judge. Then he said quietly, "No, Your Honor. No questions. Mr. Carver, you're dismissed." David Carver stumbled from the witness box. He didn't return to his seat in the gallery. Instead, he walked to the exit, shoulders hunched, a man carrying the weight of generations. As he passed the defense table, Lily spoke one more time. "You said we'd never talk about that night." He stopped, didn't turn around. "You promised me, Daddy. You said it was our secret." His voice was hollow when he replied, "I know. You broke your promise. I know. I'll never forgive you." David Carver continued walking. The courtroom doors closed behind him with a sound like thunder. Lily watched him go, her expression unreadable now. The mask partially back in place, but cracked, letting darkness seep through the fissures. Judge Moreland sat very still for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice careful and measured. "This court will take a recess. We will reconvene tomorrow morning for closing arguments and a ruling on the motion to transfer this case to adult court." She looked at Lily. "Miss Carver, do you understand that your statement just now can and will be used against you? Yes, Your Honor. Do you wish to recant any part of it? Lily considered this. Then she smiled. Not the mocking smile, not the performative one, but something genuine and terrible. No, Your Honor. I meant every word. The gavel came down. The sky outside the courthouse remained gray, as if the world had been drained of color. Morning came late and reluctant, bringing with it the final session. The gallery was less crowded today. Some people couldn't stomach returning. Others had heard enough. But the press remained, cameras ready, pens poised. This was the ending. Everyone needed to see how it concluded. David Carver did not return. His absence was notable, a ghost at a funeral. His lawyer had sent word he was too unwell to attend. No one pressed the issue. Everyone understood. Lily entered at 8:55 a.m. Something had changed in her overnight. The playful energy was gone. So was the rage from yesterday. What remained was a kind of cold clarity, as if she'd finally stopped pretending and could now rest in truth. She wore the same clothes, same blue ribbon. But she moved differently, slower, more deliberately. She took her seat next to Marcus Brennan and folded her hands on the table. Brennan looked at her once, briefly, then away. They hadn't spoken since yesterday's outburst. What was there to say? Judge Moreland entered. The courtroom rose, settled, waited. We are here for closing arguments, the judge began. Ms. Wu, you may proceed. Catherine Wu stood. She looked tired but determined. She'd spent all night rewriting her closing, trying to account for what had happened, what had been revealed. Your Honor, she began. I've prosecuted cases for 12 years. I've seen violence born of poverty, of desperation, of mental illness, of passion. I've seen people do terrible things for reasons I could understand, even if I couldn't forgive them. She walked toward the center of the courtroom. This case is different. What we've witnessed here isn't tragedy in the traditional sense. It's not a child failed by the system or destroyed by circumstance. It's something else entirely. Wu turned to face Lily directly. Lily Carver is 13 years old. She has a documented IQ of 138. She understands cause and effect, right and wrong, action and consequence. She planned her mother's murder for months. She executed it with precision. She felt no remorse. And when given the opportunity to show even the smallest shred of humanity, she instead described the killing with something approaching joy. Wu's voice hardened. We've heard testimony suggesting that witnessing her father's violence shaped her. And perhaps it did. Perhaps that moment planted a seed. But Lily herself told us the truth. She was always this way. The violence didn't create her darkness. It simply gave her permission to embrace it. She walked back to her table, then turned one final time. The question before this court is not whether Lily Carver is a child. She is. The question is whether being a child absolves her of responsibility for calculated, premeditated murder. And the answer must be no. Because if we excuse this, if we say she's too young to be held accountable, then we're saying Margaret Carver's life had no value. That her death requires no justice. That a child smart enough to plan murder is somehow too young to face consequences. Wu sat down. Judge Moreland nodded to the defense. Mr. Brennan. Marcus Brennan stood slowly. He looked at his notes, then set them aside. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. Your Honor, I've been a public defender for 23 years. I've represented murderers, rapists, and people who've committed acts I can barely comprehend. I've stood in this courtroom and argued for mercy, for understanding, for second chances. I've believed in rehabilitation. I've believed that people can change. He paused, looking at Lily. I don't know if I believe that anymore. A murmur ran through the gallery. This wasn't the closing they'd expected. Everything Ms. Wu said is true. Lily Carver planned this murder. She executed it. She shows no remorse. She's dangerous. Brennan's voice grew quieter. But she's also 13 years old. And no matter what she's done, no matter how terrifying she is, we cannot forget that. He walked toward the bench. The law recognizes that children are different from adults. Their brains aren't fully formed. They're more susceptible to outside influences. They have greater capacity for change. These aren't legal technicalities, they're scientific facts. And they apply to all children, even ones who frighten us. Brennan gestured toward Lily without looking at her. What Lily needs isn't prison. It's intensive psychiatric treatment. Long-term, secure, comprehensive treatment. She needs to be separated from society, yes, but she needs to be treated, not simply punished. Because if we give up on a 13-year-old, no matter how terrible her actions, then we're admitting our system has no room for redemption. He returned to his table. I'm not asking for mercy. I'm asking for humanity. For the recognition that even monsters were once children, and that children, all children, deserve the chance to become something else. He sat down. The courtroom was silent. Judge Moreland looked between the prosecution and defense, then at Lily. Miss Carver, do you have anything you'd like to say before I rule? Everyone turned. Lily sat very still, hands folded. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she stood. May I speak, Your Honor? You may. Lily took a breath. When she spoke, her voice was clear and calm, stripped of performance. I've been listening to everyone talk about me for 3 days. What I am, what I'm not, what made me this way. Mr. Brennan thinks I can change. Ms. Wu thinks I should be locked away forever. Dr. Voss thinks I'm broken. My father thinks he broke me. She looked around the courtroom. They're all wrong. And they're all right. I am what I am. Maybe I was born this way, maybe I was taught, maybe both. It doesn't really matter anymore. Does it? Because I killed my mother. I wanted to. I enjoyed it. And if you let me out, I'd probably do it again. Maybe not murder, but something. Because that's how I feel alive. When I'm in control, when I'm making something happen, when I'm watching what I created. Judge Moreland's expression was unreadable. So here's the truth, Lily continued. I don't feel sorry. I can't. I don't work that way. I understand that I should feel sorry, that normal people would feel sorry, but that understanding is intellectual, not emotional. It's like being colorblind and having someone describe red. I know it exists, I just can't see it. She paused. Mr. Brennan wants to save me, but you can't save someone who doesn't want saving. I don't want to be different. I like who I am. The only thing I regret is that I got caught. That's the truth. That's what you're dealing with. She sat back down. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the reporters had stopped writing. Judge Moreland removed her glasses, cleaned them carefully, replaced them. She opened her folder, reviewed pages she'd probably memorized. Then she spoke. In my 31 years on the bench, I have presided over approximately 2,000 cases. I have seen humanity at its worst and occasionally at its best. I have learned that justice is not a simple equation. It requires balancing punishment with rehabilitation, public safety with individual rights, retribution with mercy. She looked directly at Lily. This case has challenged every assumption I hold about juvenile justice. Miss Carver, you are the youngest defendant I've encountered who demonstrates this level of calculation, this degree of emotional detachment, and this frank acknowledgement of your own dangerousness. The courtroom held its breath. However, the law is clear. Regardless of the severity of your actions or the depth of your pathology, you are a minor. And the juvenile justice system exists specifically to account for the difference between children and adults. Wu tensed. Brennan straightened.